Yo, what's up, Pumas? What's up, Ivan? What's up? What's going on, y'all? Um, I really wasn't gonna go live today. I really wasn't, but something told me to talk about this. I had just finished watching a live stream on, I guess, what's her name? Terra or Tessa.js, right? Uh, and it tripped me out a little bit because I noticed that one of the gentlemen on the panel, they were talking about, DV, this, that, and the third, but I felt like more or less that it was like the women were literally trying to destroy a man, right? So what I'm going to do in this live is I'm going to try and get straight into it. I'm not going to beat around the bush for y'all. But as you see right here on the screen, is exactly what I'm going to be talking about. Why it feels like women try to destroy the man, or better yet, better alone, the man that they're with, right? So I'm gonna let you guys, share this live real quick. Tap in, hit the like button, share the live, tap the like button. I would greatly appreciate it. Let me shut this door real quick. All right. I'm back. Just want to shut the door. Didn't want to get any disturbances going on, right? So, like I was saying, let me get straight into this. I had to ask myself a question, right? After listening to the live and things like that, why does it feel like the woman that you're with is trying to break you down instead of trying to build you up? And I noticed that this happens a lot. Or better yet, another question I had to ask myself was, why does it feel like every time you try to lead, or every time you try to love, or every time you try to level up, there's resistance, there's a conflict, or there's some sort of chaos around it, right? So let me say this clearly so we do stay grounded, right? If you guys are popping in and out the live, I see a lot of people popping in and out. I do want to say this so we do stay grounded. It's not all women, but it is a real fucking pattern that's been going on that some of you, even myself, and I keep running into. Like, for instance, right, today, I took my old lady, we were walking so she can get some ambulatory care in. She has a sciatica issue, whatnot. And during our walk, we were sitting there playfully teasing each other and whatnot. But it came along to a point where I was sitting down with her, teaching her how to better sell herself, right? Because she has her own YouTube channel. And she was pretty much sitting there complaining and saying that she didn't feel as if, that what she was saying was right. Pretty much this is my interpretation of it. So I'm sitting here saying, you need to be more enthusiastic. I understand that the topics you talk about are filled with sorrow and pain and sadness, but you still need to be enthusiastic about the topics that you speak about, and not only that, to have fun as well, not sit there and I don't want to talk about having fun as in poking at somebody else's pain. That's a no. You don't do that. But when I say have fun, I mean have fun as in taking pride in what you're doing, right? So later on, as we're walking, she says something, I'm guessing to bring up the past, but some people would say it's to revisit the past. To me, it was kind of like a cheap shot, to bring up the past and things like that. Like, we just had a whole live that we just did last night, right? I'm like, we went for like half an hour talking about abandonment issues because we both have abandonment issues, right? So we go off and we talk about how that it plays a part, that I would sit there sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I would try and chase things like that, right? But 9 times out of 10, she would, sit there and do the same thing. But then I got to a point where I say, you know what, fuck it. I don't need anybody. I don't even want anybody. I don't have a desire or a need for anything or anyone right now. I just want to keep my peace. Just like she said, she wanted to keep her peace, right? But today we had a real big argument in public at that, yo. Like, all because she wanted. I honestly believe it was due to her insecurities. I honestly believe it might have been due to jealousy, because some people do feel insecure about the way they look. You know, I feel as if I'm not feel as if, but I noticed that she is very image self conscious, and I understand the whole concept of image. Image means a lot, especially in the business aspect, because once your money goes up, your image goes up. So I understand that, right? But I just want to say this because I know I got a little off topic. I just want to say this because this is a real pattern that myself keeps running into, as well as her, as well as a lot of people that we interact with, right? So, and I also want to say this, that if we don't break this down properly, we'll keep reliving the same cycle with different fucking faces all the time, right? So, tonight, this evening, I'm not going to sit here and try and play victim. I'm not going to sit here and let myself or anyone who's watching this bash women either. We're simply analyzing the system, right? So first thing I would love for you guys to understand is that some people don't know how to love. Plain and simple. Some people simply do not know how to love. They only know how to protect themselves. So if a woman, right, has unhealed trauma, especially from abandonment wounds, betrayal, or inconsistent love growing up, she might test you constantly, yo. Constantly, a woman will do that. I've noticed this. Not only that, she'll start arguments out of thin fucking air. She'll push you away just to see if you'll stay at that. And that's not her trying to destroy you on purpose. That's more or less her nervous system saying, let me break this before it breaks me. But I see that there's a big problem here, right? And that problem is, if you're a man trying to build something real, that behavior will feel like sabotage, because let's just call it what it is. It is sabotage. And it's not intentional destruction, but uncontrolled damage. So if you're watching up at this point, go ahead and drop a fact in the comments, in the chat. If you ever dealt with someone who created problems out of thin air, go ahead, drop that in the chat. If you ever dealt with somebody who wanted to cause problems out of thin air, drop a fax in the chat. Drop a 100 in the chat. Drop a flame emoji in the chat. For real. Because I want to go deeper into this. I really do. I really want to dive a hell of a lot deeper into this. So, I noticed that a relationship is supposed to be a partnership, right? But what happens when it turns into competition? So I've come to notice that it turns into who has control, who's always right and who's always wrong. Let me let the motorcycles pass real quick. Or better yet, who's winning emotionally. And when a woman feels like she has to compete with you instead of align with you, she may try to level the playing field by tearing you down, which is not because she hates you, but I believe and I find it to be because she doesn't feel safe being under your leadership or even being beside you. And that's a deeper issue, because now the relationship has no structure whatsoever. And without structure, chaos always seems to step in. So that brings me and you guys watching right now to the elephant in the room, because we're living in a time where people are being taught, don't need anyone, protect your independence at all costs, never submit, never soften. Now take that mindset and drop it into a relationship. All you're going to get is contradiction, because you can't build something meaningful with someone you're subconsciously trying to prove you don't need. So what happens? The disrespect gets normalized. Emotional reactions replace communication. Ego replaces cooperation. And now the relationship turns into friction instead of flow. And just be honest, how many of you have seen social media influence real life relationships in a negative way? Because I know there's some people out there watching right now who have seen this happen. Because now here's where most men don't want to go. Simply do not want to go. But we're going there. And fellas, tonight I know this might trigger you a lot, but I need you to stay focused on this real quick. If this keeps happening to you, we need to ask better questions. Not why are women like this, but what type of woman am I choosing? What red flags did I ignore early on? What version of me are they responding to? Because patterns don't repeat by accident, they repeat by selection. So, in other words, you might be attracted to someone who's you might be attracted to emotionally intense women, women who need fixing, women who validate you early but destabilize you later. Because when you think about it, a lot of people sit there and say that that's bad luck. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. And patterns don't change until your standards do. So a lot of people know I like to get tactical when it comes to these kind of topics, right? A lot of relationships fall apart because there's no structure. There's no standards. There's no boundaries. There's no consequences. So what happens? People want to sit there and fucking poke the bear and test you. Not because they're evil, but because that's human nature. If there's no line, it's going to get crossed. Because when you think about it, structure looks like clear communication, emotional discipline, walking away when disrespect shows up. It's not arguing, it's not begging, it's not trying to fix someone, just clarity and action. Because if you tolerate the bullshit and all the chaos, all you're really going to do is co-sign the shit. So if you're watching up to this point, right, tight boundaries. If you know you need to tighten up your standards, because at one point that was me. I had to tighten up my boundaries. I had to learn how to cut people off and learn how to say no in my younger years. And I'm not talking about as of now, I'm talking about my younger years. So let me go ahead and land my plane for y'all real quick, because this isn't about women trying to destroy men. It's about misalignment. It's about unhealed trauma. It's about weak boundaries. And it's about emotional immaturity on both sides of the spectrum. Because when those things mix, you don't get love. All you get is friction, confusion, and damage, right? So here's the mindset I really want to leave y'all with, and I'm gonna take off because I got a few things I need to do tonight. You don't control how someone behaves, but what you do control is who you choose, what you tolerate, when you walk away. Because in reality, that's power. A lot of people sit there and say, "Oh, I don't want to deal with anyone that has a power trip." But at some point in your life, I'm talking to both men and women, you're going to need that in your life. And I'm not talking about arguing louder. I'm not talking about trying to prove your worth. I'm talking about discipline, clarity, and standards. Because if a relationship feels like it's breaking you down, the move isn't to save it at all costs, right? The move is to save yourself with some fucking intention and do it on purpose. Because if you're serious about breaking these cycles and actually building strong relationships, I now work with individuals on pattern recognition, emotional discipline, and relationship strategy, right? So hit me up directly. Let's build you into someone who doesn't just attract better, but chooses better. Because that's real game, yo. Plain and simple. Stay sharp, stay disciplined, and stop confusing chaos with love, yo. Just do that. Stop confusing chaos with love. Thank you for taking time out to watch this quick little live. I appreciate that. But deuces, y'all. This your man Shelby. I'm out, and y'all be easy.